Hello everyone, this is Mr. Watu here. I've created this PowerPoint to help you with your RC 5.1. So learning objective for 5.1 is students can understand the elements of a fantasy fiction passage. I've chosen a book by Robert Munsch called The Paper Bag Princess. So before we begin, just to let you know, this book is actually part of your theme book. And I'm going to use this book to help you identify the fantasy fiction elements of a story. You can actually use the beginning of your RC worksheet, if you have the hard copy, to look at the sort of table we have to help you navigate all the different styles of stories. So if you go to the fantasy fiction table and look at the setting and characters section, you will see that our story is actually using some of those elements. For example, Elizabeth the princess, she lived in a castle, and she had expensive princess clothes. So from just this part, we can already see a few elements from the fantasy fiction being applied to this story. And we're presented with the conflict of the character quite soon. Unfortunately, a dragon stole the the prince and burned all of the princess's clothes off with his fiery breath and disappeared. So again, we see elements of fantasy fiction. Uh, a dragon being one of the main characters is a very prominent fantasy fiction element. Later on, we will see the dragon can speak, so we're personifying a mythical creature, and he has special abilities. Another thing in fantasy fiction, he has a fiery breath, and he can fly. So a lot of fantasy fiction elements here with just the one character of the dragon. So we see the journey of the main character, which is Elizabeth, the princess. She goes on a journey to get the prince back because she had wanted to marry him. And so she approaches a cave with a large door. Again, a fantasy fiction element here. Usually, if you're walking through the forest in real life, you would rarely see a cave with a large door. Um, and then, she knocked on the door. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Well, a princess." And here we see another element of fantasy fiction, which is personification, a dragon being able to speak a human language. And here we will see a few repetitions of the princess getting the dragon to repeat a few things, make him jump through a few hoops. So we'll see a few repetitions in the next few pages. So after Princess Elizabeth makes the dragon do a bunch of things like show off his fiery breath until he's out of fire, make him tired by making him fly around the world, and finally when he's so tired he falls asleep, she goes and rescues the prince. But here we see a little twist and from the classic sort of fairy tale where the princess and the prince live happily ever after. It's already a bit of a twist because it's the princess saving a prince, not a prince saving a princess, so the author has reversed that sort of element. And so after the princess saves Prince Ronald, you would expect that they lived happily ever after. But there's a twist. Prince Ronald looked at Elizabeth, and because she was wearing a paper bag, he said, "Elizabeth, you're a mess. You smell like ashes, your hair is all tangled, and you are wearing a dirty old bag. Come back when you're dressed like a princess." So we can see Prince Ronald isn't very grateful that Princess Elizabeth saved him, and he's demanding her to dress up and look pretty. So we see in the end that there's a final twist, which is pretty funny. So at the end of the book, we see another twist after Prince Ronald had expressed his displeasure of Elizabeth not looking like a princess. Princess Elizabeth, the one who saved Prince Ronald, says, Ronald, your clothes are really pretty, and your hair is very neat. You look like a real prince, but you are a bum. They didn't get married after all. And that's the end of the story. So that's the end of 5.1. Hopefully this PowerPoint helps you understand fantasy fiction elements a bit better. You can look at the front of your RC as well to get more tips there. And I will prepare another PowerPoint for 5.2 and 5.3 and so forth. Okay, see you guys soon. Bye.